Uh, Hey, this is Brian Johnson, Finance and Commerce newspaper. Please be joined by Jonathan Curry, Executive Director of the American Council of Engineering Companies of Minnesota, a leading business practice and policy advocate for consulting engineering firms in the state. Jonathan, thank you for joining me. How you doing today?
I'm doing great, Brian. The snow has melted and the sun is out in St. Paul. So
Yeah, I see that. You've got a beautiful view there behind you, and I don't know if we're supposed to get more snow again in the near future, but right now I'm kind of enjoying this.
me too. So no, excited to be here, excited to chat with you a little bit about ACEC and some of our key priorities here this year.
For sure. And I just gave a very brief introduction there at the beginning, but I was wondering if you could start out by talking a little bit more about ACEC and your mission. I know you've been around a long time. I think I see that you were formed way back in 1949 as an organization. So tell us a little bit more about that and who your members are and what your mission is.
Yeah, so ACEC was formed in 1949, incorporated, I believe, 1950. So this year is our 75th year as a trade organization here in Minnesota. So we'll be excited to talk about that this year. A little background on ACEC Minnesota and who we are and what we do. So ACEC Minnesota, here in the state of Minnesota, we represent over 100 consulting engineering firms. In total, we have about 125 companies in our membership. That encompasses about 7,500 employees across the state that are working in all types of infrastructure. So horizontal infrastructure, vertical infrastructure, geotechnical. We also have a lot of folks that work on energy, natural gas, utilities type projects. So our members really do work on all the state's critical infrastructure projects, both public and private. A little bit more about ACEC is part of a national federation. So there's 50 member organizations like ACEC around the country, one in every state, plus the District of Columbia. So we have 51 member organizations, which means we have about 650,000 engineers that are part of our group across the country. Some of our top priorities at ACEC are, one of our number one priorities is advocacy. So looking out for our members' best interest, whether it's at the state or the local level when it comes to policy, or the federal level out in Washington, D.C. We do a lot to advocate for our members and their best interest. Our second is education. So ACEC Minnesota offers lots of continuing education out there for not only our members, but folks that are outside of our membership as well. Last year, we delivered, I think, about 6,500 PDHs to engineers across the state. One of the biggest events that we do in the education space is our Minnesota Transportation Conference and Expo, which is coming up here March 19th and 21st. It'll be about 1,500 both public and private sector engineers at the River Center in here in St. Paul. 80 sessions, about 75 exhibitors. It's really going to be a great time to talk about the built environment and transportation infrastructure in particular here in the state of Minnesota. So, that's what we really do from an education side. And then, our third thing that I like to say is we do connections. So we like to bring people together. So, we bring our members together with other vendors in the states, but we also bring them together with other communities, other like-minded organizations. So we're really an organization that focuses on advocacy, education, and connection. And one of our top issues that we've been facing over the last couple of years has been workforce. So there's been great investment from the state of Minnesota and from the national, the federal government in terms of infrastructure dollars, but it's how quickly and efficiently can we spend those, and do we have the workforce to, deliver on those projects? And in Minnesota, we've seen, really a big need for engineers, both moving into the state, and our members probably have well over 1,000 open positions across the state of Minnesota. So one of the things that ACEC Minnesota did 2 years ago is we established what's called the Engineering Education Foundation of America. And that's a nonprofit that's primarily right now based in the upper Midwest, but has a national mission of making charitable educations in workforce development and education. So we've got three main priorities with that foundation. We've got a STEM education group, so that's K-12. We've got a post-secondary education group. So that's outreach to not only four-year schools, but also the two-year schools and the training programs. And then we've got an initiative that's focused around retaining talent in the industry. So it's one of the things that we're trying to do as an industry group, to combat some of the workforce issues and get more folks to be interested in the engineering profession. So
Mhm.
that's kind of a long-winded answer, Brian, but that's a little bit about ACEC Minnesota and what we're up to.
Yeah, you covered a lot of ground there, and that's great. And I'm glad you brought up the workforce thing because I remember speaking to you just a little over a year ago for an article I did about Minnesota being a leader in the effort to attract more women and people of color to engineering and design services industry. And that, of course, ties in with the whole workforce issue. And wondering if you could maybe give us an update on that and how some of those outreach efforts are going.
Yeah, so I think the outreach efforts are going quite well. We have our STEM group is really been focused on getting out to schools, but also schools in some of the disadvantaged communities. So doing STEM programs, and then also partnering with some other organizations around the state in terms of, how can we make sure that we're educating kids of all backgrounds and all walks of life on, STEM type programs, but specifically, engineering, right? So I kind of you everybody knows science, everybody knows technology, everybody knows math, but I think there's a little bit more work that needs to be done in terms of educating young folks what engineering actually is and the benefits of that career. On the post-secondary side, we've got groups that are going out to universities, and we're also in talks with groups like Summit Academy, OIC, out of Minneapolis, about, hey, are there training programs that we can maybe implement that attract some of those students from disadvantaged communities around the metro and different parts of the state to kind of get that leg up, that first introduction into the engineering sphere, and then grow their education from there. So, we really are, we're pushing education for everybody, but we do have a bit of a focus in some of those underserved communities. ACEC, we're also looking to bring back this year in 2025 our Women in Engineering program, which really is a great opportunity for young women in the engineering profession to learn from those experienced executives that really built their career over time and grew to be successful women in the industry. So, yeah, those are definitely areas that we're focused on, and they fall into our workforce efforts as well.
Yeah, the workforce is a huge deal. I know it's been well documented in the trades that there's a desire and a need for more people to work in the trades, but it goes across the whole spectrum of what it takes to build things, right? The engineers, the architects, as well as the people, the hard hats on the ground building things. So glad you're bringing awareness to that and working on that issue. So Yeah. Well, as far as some of the other going beyond workforce, what are some of the other, you mentioned advocacy being a big part of what you do at ACEC. What are some of the issues that are top of mind, I guess, besides workforce for your members now, and some of the things you're working on, maybe at the Capitol or elsewhere on the advocacy front?
Yeah, I think there's several things that we're keeping an eye on as an engineering group. Not every year is there that issue that you really dive into hard as a trade organization. But I think what's going to be critical this year, especially out in Washington, D.C., are they going to do another 5-year funding bill for transportation? I think in Minnesota, we like to see those matching dollars come back, and that creates certainty in the marketplace. And when there's certainty in the marketplace, that gives folks confidence that they can bid on projects, that those projects are going to be realized, and that allows folks like engineers who are on the front end side of design, right, to be confident that, hey, we can bid on those projects, we can up our capacity, hire new people to work on them. So, I think the funding conversation out in Washington, D.C. is going to be a big thing. And how do those funds flow back to a state like Minnesota? I think when you and I talked earlier, jury is a little bit out on the impact of some of these new executive orders are going to have on states like Minnesota. But that's something that I'm tracking closely, and I think that other like other organizations in that AEC space, in that infrastructure space, are tracking. And it's just too soon to tell what the impact some of those orders are going to have on states like Minnesota. But we'll see. And then up at the Capitol behind me, we'll be advocating for some more infrastructure funding, potentially a bonding bill if that's going to happen. I'm just happy to hear they're all back to work behind me, and I think we've got great legislators on both sides of the aisle up at the Capitol in Minnesota, and ACEC really prides ourselves on being able to work with lawmakers to educate them on what's best for the state of Minnesota when it comes to engineering projects. One topic that we'll be discussing is ACEC up at the Capitol this year. Again, is last year we were strong advocates for the state pushing for the use of more qualifications-based selection when it comes to procuring projects for engineers. So we'll be talking about that again this year as well.
All right. Well, and I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about your recent awards bash and gala. I understand you rolled out the red carpet for engineering luminaries throughout the state, and wondering if you could tell us a little bit about that and how that went.
Yeah, last Friday night, ACEC Minnesota, we hosted our 58th annual Engineering Excellence Awards Gala. We recognized 19 projects from across the state of Minnesota for engineering excellence. Those projects ranged from utility projects to solar projects. And I think there was even a roundabout or two mixed in there. But really was an opportunity for us to recognize, folks across the engineering spectrum for some of the great work that they did on projects here in Minnesota. We also had a chance, we handed out over $50,000 in scholarships to, I think it was 15 engineering students from around the Midwest. So it was a twofold celebration. We celebrated some engineering projects, and then we celebrated several young people that are looking to enter the engineering field through a scholarship program that was led through our Engineering Education Foundation.
Excellent. And what we've talked a lot about some of the issues and about ACEC's mission. Wonder if you could tell us a little bit about your personal journey and your career journey and how you came to this. You've been with ACEC Minnesota for what, since 2019, I believe? Does that
Yeah,
sound right?
So I got to ACEC in October of 19, and COVID hit us in March of 20, and I shut the business down, right? So I really came into ACEC at an interesting time with COVID, but now we're on the other side of that, and it's been great to work with a lot of the organizations and businesses here across the state of Minnesota. Prior to joining ACEC Minnesota. I've got a background. I've got a master's degree from Hamlin University here in St. Paul in public administration, but really have worked in my professional career here in the nonprofit sector. So spent time working on grant management at the Minnesota Humanities Center. And then for about 5 years, I ran a national trade organization called the Geosynthetic Materials Organization, which was a group of manufacturers that make materials that go into roads and retaining walls and containment centers, which is really how I got exposed to engineering and design and advocacy at the federal and state level, which those two experiences really served me well in getting the opportunity to run a great state organization like ACEC Minnesota.
All right. Well, great. Well, thanks, Jonathan, for that. And anything else that you'd care to add? And we've covered a lot of ground there. Any other final thoughts before I let you go?
Yeah, I think I really appreciate the opportunity, Brian, to talk to finance and commerce and your audience. And the thing that I'll say about ACEC and our members is, our members really want to be helpful out there in their community. A lot of the projects that our members work on across the state, really have impacts on communities. They have impacts on the future of Minnesota. And, I want folks to see ACEC Minnesota as a resource in that regard. So if there's opportunities for ACEC to be out there and be engaged with some of your readers and educate folks on the benefits of some of these major infrastructure projects, you don't hesitate to reach out to ACEC or myself. We really want to be a trusted resource when it comes to engineering and the impacts of a lot of our infrastructure projects across the state.
Great. Well said. And we'll certainly do that. Hope we can stay in touch and maybe we'll see you at the Capitol someday or just just maybe to just get together to chat sometime to talk more about the issues of concern to your members. So
Well,
uh,
I love that, Brian, and definitely want to stay in touch and stay engaged here.
sounds good. Enjoy the rest of your day, Jonathan. Thanks again for joining us today.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Take care.